So, have I got news for you? But first, let me explain this logo and that hat, because it has to do with the Masters Tournament, which is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, tournaments in golf globally every year that takes place. And this year, post-COVID pandemic, was wonderful to see a golfer named Scottie Scheffler win the Masters Tournament at such a young age and such a talented young guy. And you know what? He has faith in God. And that's what we all need during these days, is faith in God. So as I share this news with you, be encouraged and learn to pray and have faith in God. So, what's been happening in Israel? A lot of things. Some not so good and some good. Of course, one of the great things we heard is that the Moody's credit agency gave Israel another A+. There we go, A+. Yep, that means the economy is strong in Israel. But on the other hand, just recently, a few days ago, the IDF had to fire dozens of shells at targets in Lebanon after a rocket attack on Israel. This happened early morning, April 25th. Quote, IDF artillery is now attacking targets in Lebanon and firing at the launch area in retaliation for the rocket fired into Israeli territory, according to the IDF. Later it said it struck the launch area with dozens of artillery shells, as well as an infrastructure target. We didn't go into it much further than that. And the United Nations peacekeeping force along the border, UNIFIL, urged restraint. In other words, the UN has acted like the United Nothings, because there's not much they can do against terror, nor have they ever done. They just sit there, watch, observe, and stand there. Unfortunately, it's too little, too late. Well, Iran has now increased its military spending as well in the past year. Tehran has raised its military budget for the first time in 4 years. I wonder where they got that money from. Washington? Europe? Yeah, you better believe it. A report by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute found that Iran raised its military budget to $24.6 billion in 2021, which was an 11% increase despite the ongoing economic problems it's had. I wonder if there was more cash this time on airplanes going on pallets. Former President Obama. Well, maybe he knows something I don't know. Well, in December of 2021, Ibrahim Raisi submitted a budget bill that more than doubled the amount allocated to the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Yep, and they're the ones that Iran is trying to get removed from the sanctions list of the United States. Bad news. Well, what does it say in Scripture about all this? Proverbs 21:31 says, the horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. Go, Lord. Yeah, I'm for him. Also, Israel's Cyber Directorate issues an annual warning ahead of Iran's Jerusalem Day. Well, that day has already taken place, but Iran is, of course, raising its cyber activity against Israel and encouraging others around the world to attack Israeli websites on or around or after April 29th, which has already passed, and coordinated by anti-Israel hackers around the world under the banner, I won't tell you so you don't do it. Okay, well, you just read Psalm 91. On the other side of the world, in the Middle East, I am on that side of the world, usually. At the Cairo summit, leaders of Jordan, Egypt, the UAE discussed Jerusalem tensions. A statement from the Jordanian royal court said that 3 leaders discussed trilateral ties, current challenges and crises, as well as bolstering joint Arab action and regional cooperation on food and energy security. They also discussed the ongoing tension surrounding Jerusalem's Temple Mount. And this is the thing I don't get. All these countries know that if you target Israel and there's instability, and they're also raising a religious issue on the Temple Mount, where there should be freedom as Israel is trying to protect for all three monotheistic faiths, for Christianity, for Islam, and for Judaism. But no, that's not the way it is, because the Temple Mount is ruled by the religious Waqf under some degree of cooperation with Jordan, and always blaming Israel when they seek to allow Jews to go up and also pray, which is more or less forbidden by the Islamic jihadist Waqf. Well, I think that's unfair, and I think you all know it's unfair. And Israel insists that it is committed to the status quo and is safeguarding the rights of followers of all three religions in Jerusalem. So, what I'd like to encourage you all to do is go to our YouTube site called Roots and Reflections. Everybody say that? Roots and Reflections. That's right, because I want you to learn more about Israel, its geography, its history, its archaeology, its food and cuisine, both amongst the Jewish and Arab populations. So go to the YouTube site. I think the link is there for you. It's called Roots and Reflections. Well, there is something serious going on because more anti-Semitic attacks took place globally in the year 2021 than any year previously that I'm aware of. A death threat to Jews chanted openly at rallies across the United Kingdom. And you know, all of you know, I love the United Kingdom. I love going to London. I love visiting the whole conglomerate of nations there. I love it, just plain true. But crowds in anti-Israel protests in the United Kingdom have repeatedly chanted Arabic death threats to Jews while police have stood by and done nothing. UK's community leaders said the police do not wish to enforce the law even as protesters shout out clear death threats at demonstrations against Israel across the United Kingdom. That's not fair. Officers and prosecutors have acknowledged the anti-Semitic cry as a criminal incitement to racial hatred. Death threats, I'd say that's more than racial, with a penalty of up to 7 years in jail. Yet no action has been taken. And here's the chant. They're saying, Khaybar, Khaybar, Ya Yehud, Yaish Muhammad Sa'uf Ya'ud. Translates to, quote, watch out, Jews, remember Khaybar, the army of Muhammad is returning. And Khaybar refers to a massacre of Jews said to have been carried out at Khaybar in the Arabian Peninsula in 628. The chant was heard in 7 separate rallies last year, all of which took place across Britain during the conflict in May between Israel and Hamas. I want to tell you something. Anti-Semitism will bring a curse to anybody that submits to that spirit. To you personally, to a household, to a church, to a synagogue, to a mosque, to a secularist. Anybody who succumbs to anti-Semitism comes under a curse because it's touching the apple or the pupil of God's eye. You read it for yourself. Approximately half of all Israelis fear a second Holocaust. That is shocking. Almost half of all Israelis, worry that a second Holocaust could occur, devastating the Jewish people. It's according to a new survey conducted by the Penina movement in advance of Holocaust Memorial Day. It was published in the Israel Hayom newspaper and included many startling findings related to the concerns and fears of average Israelis. The ongoing threat from the Iranian regime, which has signaled its desire on many occasions to wipe out the Jewish state, seems to play a key role in heightening fears of a new Holocaust. Now, one item that's even more unbelievable, the survey also found that women tend to be more fearful of a second Holocaust than men. Well, I know women to be brave. I have 2 daughters and a lovely wife, and they're brave. But this is true. Women are fearing this. And also younger people are beginning to fear this more often. The survey also found that most Israelis see Holocaust Memorial Day being marked very differently in the years to come. And I would say that's going to happen because Holocaust survivors, they're well into their 80s, 90s, and many over 100 years old, and they're dying at a rate of 40 to 50 every day. So pray for the hearts and the souls of the Holocaust survivors. Many of them have expressed to us their loneliness. Let's embrace them with the love of God while they're here with us. Finally, I just want to tell you, Bennet Lapid congratulate the friend of Israel, Emmanuel Macron, on his election win in France. Well, I don't think it's as clear-cut. Yes, he is going to come back as the president, Emmanuel Macron, but of course, his leadership or his unity coalition is dissipating little by little because people want to see action more than just words. But for the most part, the Jewish community and many others are relieved because he has been fairly, or for the most part, pro-Israel. So we should learn to pray for our leaders and our presidents and prime ministers wherever they are. Well, Anyhow, Foreign Minister Yair Lapid tweeted congratulations to his good friend Macron. Apparently, they had a friendship stretching back many years when they both entered politics. Well, in closing, Proverbs 22 verse 11 says, "He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend." So let's be gracious to one another, and I'm grateful for a wonderful day outside. And remember, if you have nothing else to do, practice your putting and your chipping, and let's have a game of golf together. God bless you and shalom.